Okay, Juan, we're back. So I think in this session we want to cover something that's really, really important to us, and obviously, the entire community. And as you know, the Darwinex Community Forum invites and entertains people from all sorts of backgrounds with all sorts of dispositions, and often. While constructive conversation takes place very smoothly, obviously, owing to the nature of the conversation, there is often a level of toxicity that surfaces in other conversations, and it's important that that gets addressed, as to how we feel towards the issues that result in that happening, and how we plan on addressing them. How do we fix the Darwinic community so that it's a place that is habitable by everyone of every possible disposition, not just a few with
Hmm.
just one disposition. And just by sheer virtue of human nature, a toxic disposition tends to drive away constructive disposition, just because constructive disposition has no time nor space for toxic disposition. So these are issues that we have to deal with. How do you propose, or I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to go about addressing this subject. It's a really complicated one, and also something that's so important for all the stakeholders in the picture, all the members of the community. What do you reckon?
Sure. So I think the way to fix it, I mean, there's not one silver there's not one silver bullet that's going to do it in one sweep. There are certain things that we can do, and I'm sure that you and the team are doing, Ali. But I think there's one. Before we even get going with the community, I think we should go back to the broader Darwinex journey. And the broader Darwinex journey is that this company was born with a single mission, and that mission was to, in this case, and primarily, it's a very much trader-led vision to empower people who love the markets and want to make a living from them. They have obviously learned the lessons of the whole CFD, blah blah blah. We know all that, and I think one of the issues is that this is a technology company, and we don't really have kind of a lot of sales DNA, if any. I mean, I guess you could consider me the closest thing to a salesman at Darwinex, and that basically goes to say it all. so, uh, and in that sense, I think we've never really managed up to now to bring across this ethos that permeates all that Darwinex stands for. And I think Darwinex stands for alpha in the sense of people who seek improvement through deliberate practice and discipline. I think that's, if there's one thing that defines everybody that engages with Darwinex, or that everybody that we want to engage with Darwinex, is people who seek improvement by deliberate practice. They try, they wake up every day, and they may or may not succeed, they may or may not win, but they're trying to get better every day and kind of grow their wisdom. I guess that's the core ethos of what we try to do. Now, for reasons to do with kind of for business reasons, and in that it was a lot easier back in the day when two brothers wanted to create what today is a company with more than 50 employees and with several millions of turnover. At that point, the easiest way to get going was to be a site that diagnosed traders then and had an asset management license to offer those traders an umbrella to manage funds legally. And the idea at that point was to um, not be our own broker, because we thought, the world, there's already 1,000 MT4 brokers out there in the world. It really, the world doesn't really need another MT4 broker.
Yeah,
and and then clients like you, Ali, and Lars and Martin and many of these guys who've been with us over all these years, they basically said, look, guys, this looks pretty good, but and I trust you far more than my MT4 broker. And this is when in 2013 I caught a flight to annual event that the entire MT4 industry does, and I basically came back pronto, realizing why Martin and Lars had told us that, and then at that point is when we got our own brokerage license, and in some ways because we're kind of techie guys, we never really managed to bring across the difference. And the fact that Darwinex was a fintech that had a broker license somehow degraded into Darwinex is a broker.
On the subject of
And
broker and events is funny. One of my very, very nerdy friends once said to me, "Oh, a lot of these conferences are cases of fast cars and interesting modified anatomies."
yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, interestingly modified and eventually naked anatomies. Yes, yeah. So that's what it was. So in some ways but the good thing was it was a growing market. So I don't know if we kind of tried to capitalize on the growing market thing, or like we just failed to bring across what Darwinex was. I mean, it really is. It's hard to explain what Darwinex is. To this day, we're still struggling. And then somehow, the community or the user base of Darwinex includes these alpha personalities, people who are trying to improve every day. That's which is the ethos and the DNA of the company. But then it
And just to
also we
clarify, that's
attracted.
everyone who's trying to generate alpha, not just the individuals we were talking about now. That
No, no,
applies
no.
to
I'm
anybody.
and, like for me, alpha is an attitude.
Yeah.
For me, alpha is a mental disposition. I may be good, I may be shit. I might be 195 and have a superb physical condition. I might be short and chubby and whatever, but
Hmm.
we're both trying to do our best, and that's what
Exactly.
defines an alpha. And so it's an all-embracing ethos in the sense that this is open to anybody, but if you're not willing to do what it takes, which is dig deep and grow every day and humbly admit your own shortcomings, then you're not part of it. And that brings me to the kind of the community subject.
Hmm.
So at some point we figured, because Darwinex is such a complex thing, it probably makes sense to try and put everybody together so that we don't have to repeat the explanations one by one, and we can, instead of kind of going into the hamster wheel of repeating explanations, we can do the best explanation we can. We put it out there. We crowdsource feedback to that. We improve, and hopefully, eventually, through crowdsourced work, we get to the best possible explanation we can give, and we put it all out there publicly so that everybody can engage with it. That's really that was the idea, and that is the long-term goal. But the problem is, we probably overreached in trying to do too many things yeah. I guess in hindsight, it didn't really make sense to create a community before we had answered the question, who is Darwinex? What does Darwinex stand for? And this is for alpha personalities, meaning people who are trying to improve. And there's nothing wrong with not being alpha. It's just, if you're not alpha, you shouldn't be here because
Yeah.
this is that
I mean, at
it's
the end of the
it's a waste
day.
of your time and a waste of alpha's time, right? And then because another of our values is the transparency and meritocracy, we interpreted that as sort of freedom of expression. Anybody's free to come here and talk and this and the other, which was kind of, I guess, pretty wet behind the ears. In It's not like, I'm not guessing. I know it was very wet behind the ears because
I would
it
disagree slightly there because I think freedom of expression is a constructive effort. It's when freedom of expression becomes something that is just assumed as an entitlement and used for really more uh, personal tendencies and tends to not really respect why we're here having a conversation. That's when freedom of expression just becomes fairly useless in that setting. That's the issue.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's one of the issues. Another issue, which to me is puzzling, it's one of the bad sides to human nature, is that when somebody comes along saying, "Hey, I'm here to change the status quo," which is what Darwinex is trying to do, like, we're trying to level the Wall Street playing field, and I'm borrowing a term that one of our competitors used, actually abused. um, Somehow you get to be a carrier of hopes, in that people think that by latching on to these guys, then everything's going to be all right.
Hmm.
And somehow we we sort of implicitly were implied to have promised that if you come to Darwinex, then you're going to start winning and it's all going to be hunky-dory. And we never really said that. We basically said, this is Darwinex. It's survival of the fittest. And, we are as fit as we are right now. In the beginning, a two-sided marketplace where there's only, which looks to pair alpha producers with alpha seekers, and therefore seeks to create these network effects where the better the traders, the more investor assets, and the more investor assets, the better the traders, which is our mantra from day one, in that kind of alpha begets AUM and AUM beget alpha. That's very, very, very hard to get going because in the beginning, you have bad traders, you have few and bad traders and no investors. And it's really hard to get out of that, right? And in many ways, we kind of took the hit from people who came here thinking that, hey, Darwinex offers me a viable business model with investors. Um, some people implied that we promised to bring investors and didn't lift a finger to bring their own investors, which, by the way, is one issue. So they expected us to deliver more than we had promised. And then when the trading didn't work out, then somehow it was all Darwinex's fault because Darwinex seemed to be my hope, and now it's kind of going badly, and it's Darwinex's fault. I guess that's. I mean, I can't explain the reasoning because it's clearly illogical and it's alien to me. But for me, over the years, it's been quite painful to see people who came in who seemed to be very aligned with the vision and the kind of where we were going, and then gradually descended into a very bitter, toxic conversations, which were particularly an alpha. For me, alpha basically means, my strategy is not working. It's my freaking fault. And yeah, I probably should stop wasting time in forums before I fix my thing, right? Yeah, that's the thing, and that's not really that was on the investor side, and then on the trader side, and on the investor side, basically, the the traders are shit, and it's Darwinex's fault. That's kind of the other thing. Where in the beginning, it's true that the traders, there were few and not great. But now over the years, what we're seeing is that the guys who are particularly the most toxic are the world's most cunning experts in buying a trader in a high and selling a trader in a low and blaming it on the trader / Darwinex. And I guess our community became I guess the scapegoat place where everybody let the lower spirits flow.
Yeah, it's
And that,
unfortunate. I mean, you
yeah.
can see it from their perspective too. I mean, frustration is usually guided by some stimuli, and it's important that we
Well, I
appreciate
mean,
that.
there's nothing wrong with frustration. I think frustration is the engine of self-improvement. It's just when you basically shoot the messenger and blame your frustration on others when you've got only yourself to blame. I think that's
That's
so
when it
nothing wrong with
becomes
frustration.
character
The
damage.
problem is misdirected, vented frustration. That's
Yes.
the issue.
I mean, I think one of the things that our community forum does that few people, I believe, appreciate at this point in time, hopefully this goes up over time, is that it really is a venue for exchange towards that mission, right? Of being an alpha if you aren't an alpha, and improving your alpha if you are an alpha. And I think there are people who do appreciate that, but there is sentiment. I'm a big believer in addressing sentiment for what it is, and if we see toxic sentiment, there has to be stimuli behind it. Because if it's just toxic and there's no stimulus, then there's something very wrong with the individual. So I don't think that's the case.
Well, I mean, I think some people have a lot of time and they just wasted, because yeah, I guess I don't know. Like I really don't know, but I think it's got to a point where we are not an NGO, and this is for alphas, and it's not for and if you vent your frustration on third parties and start acting in a in unproductive ways, let's leave it at that, then this is not for you. Then maybe it's best that you go somewhere else. And I think in hindsight we should have enforced this a lot earlier and raise the bar. So I think that's kind of all I have to say without having really spent a lot of time in the community about why I think it's not where we want it to be, and where we'll work to bring. Yeah.
because most of the community is even individuals who have over time, as you mentioned earlier, gone from being aligned to being bitter for perhaps I would go as far as to say it's probably a failure on our part, on having not communicated certain things as well as we could have to get us there. But um,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it's interesting to see that sort of spiral, and the fact that we are having this conversation here, we are recording this session for people to watch later, hopefully sends a message to everyone in the community, not just the people who are not the main focus of this conversation, but people who who are creating the toxicity, for instance. It should hopefully send a message to them that we actually care about everyone's opinion, that we do care about every member of the community. And I just hope that it resonates with more people, that Darwinex is the messenger, don't shoot us. We're only
Yeah, no,
trying
so
to
I mean,
live.
I guess there's several points. I mean, I'd like the community to be a place where people contribute value, and hopefully through network effects, everybody contributes value and gets far more value than he's contributed. So it's a win-win for all sides involved, including but not restricted to Darwinex. From our standpoint, I mean, I hope people have seen that I'm making a point of joining the most interesting discussions on a weekly basis,
Mm.
and trying to explain why things are in the way they are. We certainly, it's quite humbling because, people are, they are privy to your blind side, and then you realize, yes, in hindsight, we have not given enough care to communication, and we're trying to fix that right now. So it's great to have constructive criticism, because many ways people are right. It's just saddening to see people waste. I mean, really, in my case, I think it's really saddening to watch them waste their lives away, to be honest, in doing that. It's also wasting everybody else's time. I mean, we've already had too many instances of some of the most established Darwin providers basically saying, look, I thought the community was an opportunity for me to explain or to reach out to potential investors, and so on and so forth, and I've basically quit because it's just, it all descended into acrimony and whatever. Um, and in some ways, yeah, it's like, for instance, the way some managers get criticized for not managing to make money. It's like, well, they're the whole promise is, I'm doing my best. I'm putting my best alpha and my soul into this strategy, and I'm putting my own capital to make it grow. And the first party to lose money when I'm not doing well is me. so,
Yeah,
so,
precisely.
so you're basically blaming me. I'm already, I'm already in a bad place. Why are you here to kind of add insult to injury?
Yeah, yeah.
in this? So,
And the other
I mean,
thing
I
is,
guess
such
it's just,
standards should be
it's,
upheld for everyone. So there are a
yeah, but
lot of the.
I think we have to kind of put the alpha code of conduct out there, which is, we don't always get it right.
Yeah,
When
we
we
don't.
fuck up, we get very frustrated, and then
Yeah,
we work on our own frustration to fix it. And then we're only here to help others overcome their own frustration, but not to vent our own.
yeah.
And then if you fall short of those very three simple lines, then you're not an alpha, and bugger off. It's as simple as that.
It's not
Uh,
not an environment conducive for them, the individuals who
Well,
feel
it's
this
not
way.
conducive for anyone, but I
Yeah.
think there are no negative externalities. They can go basically waste their lives away by kind of playing Fortnite for all I care, and leaving us at it, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't. It's hard enough as it is. It's frustrating enough as it is. If you add an extra layer of a completely unnecessary burden to what we have to carry, yeah, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, but for anybody watching this, the idea behind this conversation is to we're actually addressing this topic in this session, right? It's probably the first conversation we've had on this. It's not something we planned. There's,
No, and
yeah,
we'd very much welcome lessons on this. I'm sure there must be a couple of knowledgeable community members out there. I mean, I think we're approaching 50% of the staff of Darwinex has been a client before they've been employees. So if you think we are we're Muppets, you're probably right. so yes, we are Muppets, but I think we've now got a compass, and the compass is alpha, and we're going to try, if something doesn't drive us forward, it doesn't take us in alpha direction, then we'll just take it out. And if you can further our steps towards alpha, then by all means, let us know, because there's potential, there's even potentially a job opportunity here.
Yeah, and we're actually going to have another recording session at some point about that, probably.
We will, yes, by all means.
All right, thanks for the convo, Juan. This was good. This was good to air this out, and
Yeah, no,
hopefully,
and please, give us feedback. But going forward, I'll really, I'm going to be selective in, I'll contribute to other people's alpha, and I will respond to people to contribute to my alpha. But I'm just not going to waste time on people who are basically wasting their time and mine. That's yeah, it
and I
is what
think
it is.
that's pretty much everyone's take on the issue, because
Yeah.
conversations are not always nice. The issue that surfaces is when conversations go from being constructive to being completely selfish, and that's when things get out of hand.
Look, I mean, we've all thrown the toys out of the pram, but that behavior should stop at age 3, maybe 4.
Really should, yes.
Yeah, that's that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you.
Catch you later.